Hello, travelers. Welcome to Fulbright Week at Reach the World. For over 20 years, Reach the World has used virtual exchange to inspire youth to become curious, confident, and compassionate global citizens. This week, we're proud to celebrate our longstanding partnership with the Fulbright program. Fulbright travelers work tirelessly to foster mutual understanding between the people of the United States and other nations. And under normal circumstances, Fulbright travelers share those experiences abroad with K-12 students in the US through Reach the World virtual exchanges and school visits. This week, however, we're bringing their stories and the world directly into your homes. You can find a complete listing of Fulbright Week live stream events and much more at athome.reachtheworld.org. Now, it's my pleasure to welcome Fulbright alumna Kalina Silverman. Kalina spent her time as a Fulbright grantee in Singapore, and one of the things she was working on is a really cool game that she has invented called Big Talk, and I can't wait for her to tell us more about that today. I want to give a special welcome to some students who are going to be joining us live on our call today. And for all of you live stream viewers, welcome. Please use the YouTube chat bar to let us know you're here and also to share any questions you have for Kalina. We'll get to as many questions as we can in the next 30 minutes or so. But without further delay, I want to welcome Kalina to Reach the World. Hey, Kalina.
Hi, thanks so much for having me here today.
You bet. Can you tell us a little bit more about you?
Sure. So I am from Santa Monica, California, where it's 72 degrees and sunny all the time. And I lived in Singapore for my Fulbright research project in 2017 to 2018. And I was researching ways to build empathy across cultures through Big Talk. And Big Talk is now a project turned organization and company that I run full time. And it's all about skipping small talk to ask deeper questions and make more meaningful connections with people. And I'll talk a lot about it in the presentation.
Fantastic. Yeah, why don't you just dive right in?
Sure. I'll present and share screen right now. Can you see my screen?
Yep, looks great.
Awesome. So really excited to be presenting for Reach the World today in partnership with Fulbright, of course. So quick background, as I mentioned earlier, I'm the founder of Big Talk, and I'm from Santa Monica, California, and I did my Fulbright project in Singapore. And for undergrad, I studied journalism, broadcast journalism at Northwestern University in Evanston, Illinois. So you might be wondering, what is Big Talk exactly? How did it start? So Big Talk actually began with a YouTube video I made one summer on my own while I was a sophomore in college at Northwestern. And I basically wanted to experiment with the idea of walking up to strangers and skipping the small talk with them to ask them these deeper life questions. And this was all inspired by my travels that summer to Ecuador and Germany, where I was doing projects on education reform and the Holocaust, and was having all these kinds of deep serendipitous life encounters with people that I would just walk up to and interview. So I wanted to kind of mimic these experiences in my everyday life and make every day feel this magical and special. So I made this video, and I'll play for you the first 2.5 minutes of it. Hi, I'm Kalina, and this is the beginning of an experiment called Big Talk. I wanted to be able to go out, meet new people, and instead of just make small talk, actually have deeper, meaningful conversations with them. Kalina.
Get your hand on TV.
Hey, I got you.
What do I want to do before I die? Oh man, jeez. Your question?
Oh, or what do I want to do when I grow up? You mean job-wise?
That's a hard one.
Wow, that's a tough one.
Is it just one thing?
Well,
I want to learn how to scuba dive.
travel the Appalachian Trail.
Go to the priest and make a confession.
I'd like to be a herpetologist, somebody who studies reptiles and amphibians.
see my kids graduate from college.
Make every moment count.
Live without any alcohol and drugs and problems, big problems like that, and just be happy day by day.
Being able to reconcile with my father and say I love you to him.
I want to have a wife and kids. I wrote like an essay on it when I was in 5th grade, and I remember all my friends made fun of me because everyone was like, I want to be a sports star or a movie star, but I just said I want a wife and kids.
I'll be happy because I already lived, before I lived very bad. I was homeless for 13 years.
Maybe call a lot of my friends.
I'd probably text all my friends.
I would take a road trip to go see someone today. I can't say. I would tell them that I love them. Yeah.
Do they know you love them?
I think so.
What would I want to do today? If I was to die tomorrow, if I knew I was going to die tomorrow. Be with my family.
If I knew I was gonna die tomorrow, I'd get on the airplane to go be with my son. You know, I'm gonna cry. It's literally, I'll say the most significant relationship that I have, being 18 and having a baby.
If I were dying, I'd love to have Charlie on my bed. Ray was dying. He had this little fluffy dog that cuddled right next to him and would not. Oh, that's fascinating. There's a dog bark. Do you love that or what?
So I'll stop it right there, sake of time. But yeah, so that was a video I made where I just walked up to strangers throughout Los Angeles. And in making that video, it showed that just by skipping the small talk and asking a deeper universal life question, you could connect with people no matter what they looked like, no matter what they did, where they were from, how old they were, just through these simple questions that I called big talk questions instead of small talk questions. So I started creating more of these questions that could transcend culture, country, age, social hierarchy, questions that everyone could relate to no matter where they were from or what they did. So you can see the question, what do you want to do before you die right here? There are other ones like, what makes you feel really alive? Or what has been your favorite age so far and why? Or if you could talk to everyone in the world, what would you say? And after I posted the video to YouTube, it actually went viral and it was featured in USA Today and Huffington Post and then Business Insider Germany and then other publications around the world. And I gave a TEDx talk about making big talk and today it has over 6 million views on YouTube. And because of all these views, people from around the world learned about big talk and were starting to email me with their examples of how they were making big talk around the world. So here are just a few examples. Here are a group of models in Taiwan who felt like the modeling industry was super superficial. You know, you're just talking about appearance a lot. So they wanted to host their own big talk dinner where they wrote down their own questions. Someone said, what is the kindest thing you've done for yourself? In the middle top, there were 2 students in South Africa who made their own big talk video where they were answering questions. And then on the right, you can see there was a big talk dinner held for strangers in Berlin, Germany, where strangers got together to ask each other these questions. At the bottom, there's a big talk party in Trinidad and Tobago. And actually just yesterday, someone from London Business School reached out to me because he said he learned about big talk when he lived in Trinidad. And now he's trying to bring big talk to his business students in London. So it's cool how big talk has been traveling across the world itself. And there were students in Ukraine who would use big talk to help them meet each other during Welcome Week. And also in the Peace Corps in Thailand, they were using big talk questions as a way to skip the small talk and get to know each other when they're, all alone in a new land and very far from home. And I was getting feedback from all over the world and noticed that I actually had quite a bit of feedback from Singapore, which is a very multicultural, multi-religious, and multiracial society. For example, someone wrote to me and said, "Hi, Kalina, I'm an expat living in Singapore for 2 years. I don't know if it's a cultural thing or whatnot, but my coworkers don't seem eager to connect with each other beyond small talk." And later I found out in Singapore, it can be really hard to connect beyond small talk when you're in a very hierarchical corporate setting. Someone else said, "I'm a VC in Singapore, but I always hated small talk, especially at social or business events." And a lot of students reached out to me too. Someone said, "I'm a current junior at a university in Singapore. I'm super excited to see changes in conversation quality amongst Singaporean youth. you need any help with your program and think I can help, let me know and I will do my best. And so when I got to Singapore, I actually met a lot of these people in real life and worked with them on Big Talk. So Big Talk in Singapore, the little red dot of Asia is what it's known as. You can see right here, it's a very, very tiny little country. It's basically a city. So I received all these messages from Singaporeans who wanted to skip the small talk in their very hierarchical and culturally diverse society. So it was interesting. It was a very mixed society, but it wasn't well integrated. People still kind of stuck with their own social groups or cultural groups. So I decided to pursue a Fulbright research project about how to build cross-cultural communications and establish empathy through Big Talk. And my hypothesis was that Big Talk conversations can open pathways for empathetic communication so Singaporeans could listen to and address the true needs of each other. And I decided to focus on the migrant worker population in Singapore because they kind of exist at the bottom of the totem pole, unfortunately. And almost every household that could afford it had their own migrant worker cleaning lady, and there were a lot of migrant worker construction workers, but they didn't really communicate with the Singaporeans themselves. So I started volunteering with TWC2, which helps to serve migrant workers. And I started asking them Big Talk questions. And at the same time, I was asking Singaporeans Big Talk questions. So I started testing how could migrant workers respond to Big Talk questions. So you can see on the left here, we were using, I think, Google Translate to translate the different question cards on the Big Talk question card game. And we would notice that some questions they would understand and some they wouldn't. So for example, what gives you hope was hard for them to understand, but they really understood what do you hope for. So we would change the questions to frame them in the proper cultural context. And we would work with translators and migrant workers and Singaporeans and expats to all see who could relate to these questions across cultures. And we narrowed it down to 5 Big Talk questions. And they seem so simple, but they're just universal. So these 5 Big Talk questions that people could relate to no matter their age or their culture were, what do you miss? What do you find beautiful? What gives you hope? And what has been your favorite age so far and why? And the answers were pretty simple, but things that, you know, you could ask a migrant worker, you could ask your parent. Like people miss their college friends or they find the sky beautiful. We all can see the sky. Hope, everyone wanted to find a better life for their kids and their families. And favorite age so far and why? I often ask this question. People usually say it's the year they met someone that they fell in love with, or a time that they moved to a new country for the first time and had a lot of freedom, or just some sort of moment of growth. So today I've continued since coming back from Singapore to spread Big Talk all around the world. When I first got back, I turned Big Talk into a global communications and education company. And so I traveled to Uzbekistan. Here you can see I was working with the embassy in Uzbekistan to present Big Talk to exchange students there. And some of them wrote the most profound Big Talk questions. I would lead these workshops where people could write down their own questions. And they would often, and some of them were very young, but they would talk about their hopes and their dreams and their fears. Some of them would ask fun questions like, if your life story were titled into a book, what would be its title? And then I gave a lot of Big Talk workshops and events for companies where a lot of times people were so focused on work and service level conversations about networking and what do you do and how do you want to get to a higher position in your career, but didn't really have time to delve deep down into the values behind it or their stories. So here I gave a Big Talk talk for 200 women at Adobe in San Francisco, and we created these little Big Talk journals that people could write in. And actually I just created a downloadable Big Talk journal that you could go to the Big Talk website and download, and you can create your own journal and write in it. And then a couple weeks ago, I held a Zoom call, a Big Talk with military veterans. And even just in that Zoom call over 2 hours, I cried like 3 times hearing their stories. They were so profound and deep. Because a lot of veterans, I'll read you the quote that the man who led the organization said. He said, "For veterans, we need to cut through the noise and get right to the heart of our experiences. Questions such as, how would you like to be remembered? Or what is it about your military service that you would like people to know can help? There's a missing link between the trauma of indoctrination from military service and what happens after going back into society, where you're suddenly supposed to reintegrate while being a change maker. A veteran shouldn't be 50 years old saying, I've never told anyone this part of me before." And I think that goes for all of us. We shouldn't get to a point where there's all these deep things inside of us that we've never been able to talk about. And Big Talk is just an easy tool to help people open up. So with all these ideas and examples and stories, Big Talk's goal has always remained the same. It's to foster more meaningful connections and enhance interpersonal communication, respect people's differences while honoring the commonalities of human experiences, and serve as a platform to build empathy across boundaries of difference. And here's just some information where you can find out more about Big Talk before we open for the Q&A. There's the website for Big Talk, a YouTube channel with videos, a Facebook page, and there's a Facebook group you can join where you can interact a lot. And then Instagram, of course. And if you ever want to reach out to me, everything is just by my name, Kalina Silverman, including my email. And I'm always online, always on email or Instagram or whatever. So I'm happy to respond to any questions you might have. And I'll stop right there and open up for Q&A. And maybe at some point I can pose a Big Talk question to the audience also.
Awesome, Kalina. What a great story. I love the way that this idea that began in the United States has such broad application to cultures and people around the world, and building empathy, like you said. What a great vision and a great journey that you are on, and bringing lots of people with you. We have two students who are on camera today, and I want to give them a chance to ask their questions directly to you. So Fernesi, I'm going to unmute you, and you should go ahead, Fernesi, and ask Kalina your question.
Okay.
Hi, Hello. Hi. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was gonna ask you, what was it that like interested you about it? Like about this theme?
This theme of Big Talk?
Yeah.
Yeah. It actually all
just
started
talking
when
to people in general.
Yeah. So it actually started when I first got to college when I was 18. I felt really, really confused and really lonely. And I thought I was the only one who felt that way. And it wasn't until later in the year when I made more friends and we started to get more comfortable talking to each other that I found out so many of us had felt like that. And I thought if only we had all skipped the small talk in the beginning and not just talked about what's your college major, where are you from, we would have been able to open up about what we were feeling and feel less alone. And so one night I was having a conversation with a friend and it was pretty deep. And I said, wow, I wish more conversations could be like this. And he said, yeah, screw small talk. And immediately the name Big Talk popped into my head. And that's how this actually all really began.
Cool, great question, Fernesi. Thank you so much. I'm gonna switch it over to Alexa. Alexa, you're unmuted, go ahead.
So are you proud of how much you impacted people, like made them more comfortable with each other?
Thanks for your question. Yeah, I would say I'm proud. There's been moments where I've had doubts because it's always weird to start a project and then really put it out there in the world and have people respond to it. But now that people have shared enough stories about how Big Talk impacted their lives, for example, the question card game led to a marriage proposal between a guy who was in the military and his girlfriend at the time. They were writing letters back and forth to each other where they were answering Big Talk questions, and it helped them deepen their relationship. And yeah, that marriage proposal story really made me proud of Big Talk. Or stories when people tell me how they struggle with mental health or depression, or with opening up in the military, or with autism, and Big Talk questions help them. Those moments make me really proud.
Have you found, just if I can insert my own question here, I'm wondering, have you found that when you're having these conversations across culture that people realize unexpected things about different cultures?
I think people just realize that they're all actually the same. And I realize it too. It's so easy to just see someone and think they're different. We all have that internal bias, even if you are well-traveled or have interacted with lots of different people. But to just have someone who maybe even either looks really shy or closed off, and then suddenly they just light up and open up and tell their story, it's really amazing. And it's a really great reminder that it's important to share stories, and it really helps to build empathy for other people.
Absolutely. Great. I want to give one more reminder to our live stream audience. If you have questions for Kalina, please drop them in the chat bar. We'll get to them as many as we can. I'm going to go back to Fernesi. Fernesi, is there anything else you'd like to ask Kalina? Sorry, I'm trying to unmute you here.
Not really. I think she answered everything.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for your first great question. Alexa, I'll give you a try. Do you have anything else you'd like to ask Kalina? All right, well, we'll come back to you. If you have a question you'd like to ask, just let us know, Alexa, and we'll bring you in. Kalina, what was it? We've talked this week with a lot of Fulbrighters who were doing all sorts of different things around the world. What do you think it was, or what was the thing that surprised you the most about being in Singapore and having this Fulbright experience in Singapore?
Yeah, I think it was cool that the Fulbright experience was really holistic. Like it wasn't just about the research. It wasn't just about this big talk research project, that like everything I did sort of interwove with it. I ended up learning how to surf in Bali. And then while I was in Bali, I brought some of the big talk questions and was talking to the Indonesians over there. Or I ended up joining both a Muslim women's group and a Jewish women's group, just because I met people and ended up giving big talk presentations to them. So through the other things I did while I was there, it led to connections that I never would have anticipated. And like Big Talk became something that I just would use at parties in Singapore. And so it wasn't necessarily like the formal research that made the most impact while I was there. It was just the day-to-day experiences I had. And it was because I had stayed with a former Fulbright when I first arrived that I met his friend who was running the business school in Kazakhstan, that I ended up going to Kazakhstan a year later to give a Big Talk presentation. So it's just cool how one thing leads to another and you just don't know what to expect, but as long as you're really open-minded and say yes to everything when you're in a new environment, like magic just happens.
What advice would you give to the young learners who are watching today's live stream or watching the recording, if they have an idea or they have a desire to go and meet people who are different than them and really start to explore some of the themes you're talking about?
Don't be afraid to do it. There's so many resources out there, whether it's Fulbright or volunteer programs, or I know I have some friends who've done the Peace Corps, although that's more involved. But really just start with an idea. And like Big Talk just started off with a conversation I had one night. And then it turned into me writing down a bunch of stuff on my notebook and trying to brainstorm how it all fit and seeing how experiences played out. So start with an idea, talk about it to people, get feedback, because an idea shouldn't just be sitting in your own head. I think there's this myth that it has to all be like on you to come up with it and do something about it. But if you talk to people, you'll be surprised where you can find help. It'll come in the randomest places, really. I had Fulbright on my radar, but I really didn't just get that extra push to apply until I was just sitting in a really boring job one summer as a receptionist, and I got an email from someone I had known at Northwestern who just forwarded me the link to the Fulbright application. It said, something you might be interested in, ? And that immediately just like served as a catalyst for me to apply.
Absolutely, so cool. Fernesi, I see that you have raised your hand digitally in the Zoom. That's very cool. You'll have to teach me how to do that, but I'm gonna unmute you so you can ask your question. Go ahead.
Okay, so which of your like big talks impacted you the most, like out of all of them?
Great
Which
question.
one like was your favorite, basically?
That's a really, really good question. It's so hard to pick favorites. I would say I really was impacted just a couple weeks ago by doing the big talk with the veterans over Zoom, because they were so vulnerable and open with their stories, and they've gone through some really, really hard things. But at the same time, it was really interesting comparing that to doing a big talk with a bunch of women who just live in Los Angeles and live in Denver, Colorado, and we're sharing some of their struggles. And it just shows that no matter where you are or what you do, everyone's struggling and everyone's going through something, and everyone has also really funny and interesting stories to share. Like there's always laughter on these conversations, but also tears too. So yeah, I would say the veterans was one of my favorite, and then the one with the group of women was one of my favorite. And then I liked doing a big talk with middle schoolers in Colorado, because sometimes I find the younger that people are, the more open they are and more shameless they are in asking any kind of question. So the middle schoolers were great, and even making a video with where I interviewed 2 6-year-olds and asked them, what advice would you give to adults? And they were just like, adults need to be more mindful and just do one thing at a time. And that's just such great advice. And I swear every adult needs that. So yeah, I like talking to kids and big talking with little kids.
Absolutely. Fantastic question, Fernesi. Thank you so much.
Yeah, great questions.
I'm going to go back to Alexa. She has also raised her hand. Alexa, go ahead.
Were you ever nervous starting this movement, and did you ever think about giving up?
Really good question. And yes, many times. It's been about 5 years now since starting Big Talk. And I mean, even just from the very beginning, when I was walking up to strangers and making those videos, there were so many times where I almost gave up. And it wasn't until the point where I interviewed that man who was sitting in a suit and asked him what did he want to do before he died, and he just broke down crying and talked about wanting to be with his family, that I realized that this was actually a really important project. But right before that, I almost gave up because like, I don't know really where I'm going with this. Like that was kind of like the climactic moment to me of the video, but when I was just creating the project, I didn't know there would be a climactic moment. But since then, there's been plenty of times where I've almost given up on Big Talk because I was so confused about why I was doing it or what was the purpose of continuing it. And it's taken so many shapes and forms, whether it's a video project, a card game, a research project, a workshop series. So I've had to just constantly readjust in my own mind why I'm doing this, and then remembering the core purpose. It's really just to help people connect and build empathy for each other and feel less alone. And whenever I get back to that core purpose, I stop like deciding that I should give up, and then I keep going.
Great question, Alexa. I have two quick questions. One, are you a naturally outgoing person, or is it challenging for you to start these kinds of conversations with other people? And two, how did you come up with questions that were so universal to everybody?
So I'm naturally outgoing when I'm comfortable, which I think is the case with a lot of people. If I'm now I'm shameless because I've done Big Talk for so long that I naturally don't mind talking to anyone. But it took practice, really. Big Talk, like anything, is a skill that could take practice. But I've always been more extroverted. Like I thrived off human interaction and energy. But I've also been pretty introspective, which I think is why I consider these deep questions all the time. And sorry, what was your second question?
How did you identify the questions that would sort of cut across people everywhere and just be universal?
Yeah. So I kind of created this framework of 3 criteria for a Big Talk question. And they were, one, that it's an open-ended question that's not a yes or no question that could lead to a follow-up question. 2, that it's universal, as in you could like test it out with anyone and they would be able to answer it. Like you could be like, could I ask my grandma this? Could I ask my teacher this? Could I ask a stranger on the street this question? So you can kind of test that in your mind. And then finally, it would be a question that everyone would ideally have their own unique answer to it. I mean, of course, there might be some overlap, but it's something that each person would be able to share their own story. And it's not necessarily opinion related or knowledge related. Like you don't have to be informed. It's more about your personal life experience. So it's not like testing someone on politics or anything, just asking them about their own experiences. So it takes the pressure off, actually. Some people are very intimidated by the idea of these Big Talk questions, but once they answer them, they find out it's actually kind of like a relief because you're just being yourself rather than having to act a certain way or informed in anything.
Okay, yeah. So we have just a couple minutes left. I know you had maybe a sample question that you wanted to ask our participants quick.
Yeah.
And it doesn't sound to me like the answer to most of these questions is quick. But that's okay. That's the point. So Alexa Furnesi, do you want to give it a try? Should we try to answer one of the Big Talk questions?
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Awesome. Let's do it.
Well, I thought since we have the theme of Reach the World in this presentation, one Big Talk question I love to ask everyone, and you could literally answer it however you want, is if you could create and run your own country, what would it be like?
Great question. Before you answer, Alexa and Furnesi, if anyone wants to answer that in the live stream chat, please feel free. I'd love to see your answers. Alexa, do you want to give it a try? It's a tough one. I know
it's a hard question, but
yeah. And in your video, even the adults kind of pause and they're like, whoa, this is a different kind of question.
Yeah.
Alexa, I don't want to put you on the spot if you don't want to answer the question. If you want to think about it for a little bit too and get back at some point, that's perfectly fine. Furnesi, do you want to give it a try?
Sure. If I were to run my own country, I would probably have like a country where everything's just peaceful. everyone is very close to each other, and yeah, it'd probably be a small country, like really tiny island, probably.
That sounds like a lot of fun. I would love to live in your country.
Yeah, great answer. Thanks, Vernesi, for taking a try at that. These all seem like questions too that you give an answer and then you maybe think about it for a couple more hours and you come back to it and like, oh, maybe I would do this too.
Yeah.
Alexa, you're still with us? You want to give it a try?
Same thing as Frenesy, probably where everyone is close and it's peaceful. Not everyone's at war because of politic decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah. But those are both very, very nice questions. And I think a lot of people would agree with you both, Alexa and Frenesy. Great questions. Well, Kalina, that 30 minutes has just flown by. This has been such a fun conversation. I want to finish by asking you a question that we ask all of our live stream participants, which is after the COVID-19 pandemic dies down, hopefully, and we're all free to roam about the world again, what's your next adventure going to be?
Oh, I love what's your next adventure. That's one of my favorite Big Talk questions too. Well, lately I've been practicing surfing a lot. So ideally somewhere where I could go surf in really beautiful, clear blue waters. Because this morning there's like a little bit of brown stuff in the water. So next adventure would be a trip where I could do something like that.
All right, well, that sounds amazing. I hope you get the chance to do that again, or do that really soon. Kalina, thank you so much for joining Reach the World today and sharing both your Fulbright journey in Singapore and some background on Big Talk with us. It's been a lot of fun learning more about it. I want to thank also our on-screen participants, Alexa, Frenesy, thank you so much for joining us, and also our entire live stream audience for going on this journey with us too. You can join us again tomorrow, May 22nd, for our final Fulbright Week live stream events. We'll be journeying to Estonia and Japan, and you won't want to miss it. The full lineup of Fulbright Week events can be found at athome.reachtheworld.org. So until then, take care, everybody.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much for having me. This was great. It was great to meet you, Frenesy and Alexa.